Have you ever thought about those figures in history who are like the architects of nation? I know the ones who aren't always in the spotlight, but their work is really what everything else is built on?
Oh yeah, for sure. Those behind-the-scenes people who really laid the groundwork for everything that comes after.
Exactly. Well, today we're diving into the story of someone like that from Ethiopian history. Someone you might not know by name, but his influence is huge. He's Ras Makonnen.
Ras Makonnen, a pivotal leader, super trusted advisor, and also, importantly, the father of Emperor Haile Selassie.
Right, and that in itself speaks volumes about his impact, how much his legacy shaped what came next. So this deep dive, it's for you, our listener. You want to get right to the heart of things, no fluff, just straight to the good stuff.
We're all about that, efficient and thorough. That's the name of the game here. We're going to unpack Ras Makonnen's life, what he accomplished, and really get a sense of his character.
Yeah, those essential nuggets that make you say, now I understand why this guy was so important. And to do this, we dug into a bunch of historical accounts, biographies, the whole works.
And what's super interesting is that these sources sometimes offer totally different views on the same events, which we'll definitely explore to give you the full picture.
That's the fun part, right? Putting those puzzle pieces together. So our mission today is crystal clear. We're bringing you the need-to-know info about Ras Makonnen. Shortcut to being well-informed, you could say.
Yeah, to understand this incredibly influential historical figure and, of course, his lasting impact, especially on the path his son, Emperor Haile Selassie, ended up taking.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Ras Makonnen was born in 1852 in Menz, which was part of the Shewa province back then. And get this, he wasn't born just anywhere. His dad was Dejazmak Wolde Mikael Wolde Melekot Dejazmak, a big deal military title, by the way, and his mom.
His mother was Wazero Haile Selassie, Wazero being a title of respect for women. And yeah, that name Haile Selassie, that should sound familiar, right?
It definitely rings a bell, especially with what we're talking about today.
You got it. Through his mother, Ras Makonnen had a direct line to the Solomonic dynasty, super important. She was the granddaughter of Haile Selassie of Shewa, so this royal bloodline connection. It's essential for understanding his influence later on and where his descendants fit into the whole picture.
So right off the bat, he's immersed in Ethiopian high society, you could say. His formative years, it's all about soaking in this intense cultural and political scene. His dad being involved in the court, in governance. I mean, young Makonnen must have been like a sponge, picking up all these insights into power dynamics and how things actually worked.
Oh, absolutely, a front row seat to the inner workings of power. And his education, it went beyond the traditional stuff that Ethiopian nobility got, religion, philosophy, military strategy, though he was definitely well-versed in all that. But he also got this hands-on education, right there alongside Melekot II, who was king of Shewa at the time, participating in political and military planning. Talk about an apprenticeship.
Wow, learning by doing at the highest level possible.
That's one way to put it.
And it wasn't just about observing, was it? He traveled with his father, fought in battles right next to Melekot II. I mean, experiencing that firsthand, that must have been incredibly shaping. I'm thinking about military tactics, but also that whole dance of diplomacy.
Oh, absolutely. Those early experiences weren't just witnessing history. He was in the thick of it, shaping it. And that gave him practical knowledge and political smarts he just couldn't get anywhere else.
So fast forward a bit, and things really take off for him career-wise. He starts under his dad in the military, but Melekot II sees something special, this natural leadership and diplomatic talent. And that leads to a pretty major appointment in 1887, governor of Harar.
That governorship, that's a turning point. Harar had just become part of the Ethiopian Empire, and now Makonnen's in charge of this super important, culturally diverse region. It's a big deal, but there are some seriously different perspectives on his time there, which is important to acknowledge.
Right, totally different perspectives. On one hand, you have people like Jules Borelli and some Harari accounts saying that Harar was basically plundered by Abyssinian soldiers after they took it over.
Yeah, pretty harsh accounts of oppression, starting with Ras Makonnen taking charge, even the order to replace the main mosque with an Orthodox church that caused a lot of tension.
And Charles Michel wrote about the occupation too, how rough those early years were, soldiers taking over people's homes, their stuff. It's hard to hear these stories of looting and then also read about Makonnen having good relations with foreigners. How do historians even begin to piece this together? Is one side of the story more common in the sources?
It's tricky, right? Historians have to look at each source with a critical eye, considering the author's biases, the time they're writing in, who they're talking to, all that stuff. Europeans like Borelli and Michel, they were focused on the immediate effects of the conquest, so maybe there were cultural misunderstandings or preconceptions at play. And Harari oral histories, well, they understandably focus on the losses and disruption from their perspective, so it's a complex picture.
So much nuance, yeah. But then there's another side, right, where he has these good relationships with Europeans, even Capuchin missionaries. He's genuinely interested in learning about the outside world, which makes you think maybe he had a more open, even progressive approach to governing.
Exactly. This duality is something we got to keep in mind. We have the forceful integration of Harar, the negative consequences for some, but also him engaging with, learning those outside traditional Ethiopian circles. It's a lot more nuanced than just good guy, bad guy.
Definitely not black and white. Okay, moving beyond Harar, we also see him expanding the Ethiopian empire east and south big time, conquering territories of the Isa and Gadabusi. Then in 1891, he occupies the Ogaden region. That's a major power move, solidifying Ethiopian control over a huge area.
For sure, and his control, his ability to expand influence, it was definitely helped by his interest in and involvement with the arms trade. This guy had a thing for firearms, and that really shifted the power balance in the region.
So let's talk about his achievements on the diplomatic front. The sources all point to him being a key player in representing Ethiopia internationally, right? This is a time when European powers are all over the place trying to carve things up, but Makonen's out there fighting for Ethiopian sovereignty. Definitely brings to mind the Treaty of Wuchao.
Oh yeah, the Treaty of Wuchao is super complex situation, and he's right in the middle of those negotiations. He made sure that Ethiopia was recognized as an independent nation by those European powers, despite their colonial ambitions. His diplomatic skills, they were just as important as his military ones, maybe even more so in safeguarding Ethiopia's future.
And of course, you can't talk about Ras Makonnen without mentioning the Battles of Adwa in 1896, a defining moment. This is a huge victory against the Italians. A powerful symbol, too.
Absolutely. He commanded a major battalion there, his strategy essential to their success. Adwa, it wasn't just winning a battle, it was about African resistance against colonialism, and Ras Makonnen, he was a major player in that.
And after that victory, he goes back to Harar and starts these big modernization efforts, bringing in modern agricultural methods, setting up new administrative structures. So it's not just about military strength for him, he's also thinking about long-term development and progress.
Yeah, that's key to understanding him, his vision. He's not just focused on the immediate military and political stuff, but on making things better for people, strengthening the empire for the future. That's a big part of his character.
And this forward-thinking approach, we also see it in education. He establishes schools in Harar with modern curricula, even supporting his son Tafari's education specifically. It's like he's consciously preparing the next generation for a world that's changing rapidly.
Yeah, totally. He sees the power of education, how it can transform a society, and invests in making sure his son is ready for whatever important role he might play in Ethiopia's future. Smart move.
So let's talk about his relationship with Emperor Melekot II. Everything points to this deep trust between them, a shared vision for Ethiopia. It goes way beyond a governor or general. He's a truly trusted advisor, almost a confidant.
There's this phrase in some accounts, breath of Menelik's, which really captures how close they were, how much influence he had. Menelik II totally relied on him, valued his advice on all the big political decisions, reforms, everything.
We touched on some of the big battles, but it's worth emphasizing his role. At Adwa, his tactical thinking was crucial. His troops really messed up the Italian brigade, taking over Mount Gusoso, which threw a wrench in their plans. Big contribution to the win.
And his military talent wasn't just at Adwa. In the Somali campaigns, he's again key to securing those territories, dealing with all these different cultures. The victory against Haji Muhammad, the Mad Mullah, at Jijiga in 1900 classic flank attack he planned with General Benti, shows his tactical brilliance. Even though the Mullah came back later, it shows Makonnen constantly working to keep things stable, maintain Ethiopian control.
Right, and his engagement with the world, it wasn't just about military and diplomatic things in Africa. He went on diplomatic missions abroad, going beyond the Treaty of Wuchale, expanding his horizons, putting Ethiopia on the map internationally, attending King Edward VII's coronation of London in 1902, then going to Italy, France, Turkey, Germany. He's seeing the European world firsthand, how things are changing.
Super valuable experience. And those decorations he received, they weren't just for show. Knight Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George from Britain, high honors from Russia, France, Italy, the Ottoman Empire, that's real respect, showing how Ethiopia is becoming a power to be reckoned with on the world stage.
And all those experiences abroad, they seem to have really fueled his work back in Ethiopia, pushing for internal reforms, improving administration, especially in Harar. He focused on education, infrastructure, judicial reform, laying the groundwork for Menelik II's vision of a modernized Ethiopia.
Yeah, he really tried to make things more just, more fair, like during those local uprisings in Tigray after Mangasha's rebellion. He tried to use the judicial system, figure out who was responsible, even though some people didn't understand it at first. It shows his commitment to justice, probably influenced by those European missionaries and his own observations of how different systems worked.
There's this quote from him: "Justice is the most important rule of life. God will judge us as we have judged," which really shows his personal belief in fairness.
Exactly. He's not just going through the motions, it's deeply held for him.
It's also striking how he wasn't into harsh punishments. He was reluctant to execute rebels, even convinced Menelik II to spare Ras Makonnen after he surrendered in 1899. It's a more humane approach, you could say, but also politically smart, keeping things stable.
Oh yeah, he gets it. Too much brutality just breeds resentment, more problems down the line. He preferred a fairer, more merciful approach, even if it wasn't always popular at the time. It speaks volumes about him as a person and how he saw Ethiopia's long-term future.
Okay, let's dive into his character, his overall vision. From what we've read, Ras Makonnen comes across as a complex, fascinating guy. He's a brave, skillful general, but without those stories of brutality you often hear about military leaders back then.
Yeah, a rare combination. And he was known as a clever but honest negotiator, which in the world of diplomacy, that's a serious asset. Plus, he's into machinery, mathematics, had what they call the scientific mind, a real progressive thinker, intellectually curious, but also very religious throughout his life. It's like he saw science as a way to get rid of superstition, but not to replace his spirituality. A balanced leader, you could say.
Definitely a unique combination. And his bond with Menelik II, it's really special. To be the one person Menelik trusted completely, shared his secrets with, that says a lot about Makonnen's integrity, his judgment, and his loyalty.
No doubt.
The sources also highlight his dedication to his family. As a father, he had a big family, including Tafari, and you can tell he felt responsible for them, even though his duties often kept him away. You know, he couldn't always be there for their education like he wanted to.
He was definitely a busy guy, but still, family was important.
And his vision for Ethiopia, it's so ahead of its time. He wanted less infighting, more unity, was open to learning from the West, wanted to end brutal punishments and slavery. All this building on the unity that Menelik had achieved. It shows he was deeply invested in making things better for everyone, for the whole country.
He was thinking about the big picture, the long game, not just quick fixes.
And that vision, it wasn't just talk, it was how he lived, how he governed. And it definitely influenced his son reign, big time. Speaking of which, his most famous descendant, Emperor Haile Selassie, it's clear that Haile Selassie's reign, all the changes he made, were deeply shaped by his father's principles, his forward-thinking ideas, and his actions.
Oh yeah, that connection is undeniable. The modernization under Haile Selassie, Ethiopia becoming the symbol of African independence, it all goes back to the foundation that Ras Makonnen laid. Remember how he pushed for modern education in Harar? That led directly to Haile Selassie expanding schools all over Ethiopia, changing the whole society.
It all comes full circle. And his legacy isn't just through Haile Selassie. His descendants include other major figures in Ethiopian politics and society, showing his impact on the country's leadership continued for a long time.
A real dynasty, for sure. But sadly, his life was cut short. He died in 1906 from typhus on his way back to Addis Ababa from Harar. There's this touching detail how he whispered a blessing to his son Tafari on his deathbed, this last act of fatherly love, maybe even passing on the torch. In a way.
And the sources talk about how devastated Menelik II was when he heard the news. It wasn't just losing a family member, but a partner, his most trusted advisor, a key part of his leadership. Huge loss.
A huge loss, for sure. His impact on Ethiopia, there's no denying it. He was crucial in shaping the country's politics, its military, especially during a really uncertain time. He protected their independence, started those early modernization efforts, and his vision, it lived on, inspiring the nation and influencing things through Haile Selassie's reign.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Ras Makonnen's life and legacy, the big takeaway for you, our listener, is just how much he did, how complex and important his contributions were. He's a crucial figure in Ethiopian history, a trusted advisor to Menelik II, a brilliant general whose victories, especially at Adwa, were game changers. Plus, his diplomatic skills were key to putting Ethiopia on the world map. And let's not forget his early efforts to modernize, create a fairer society, all of which became this legacy that he passed down to his son, Haile Selassie. Understanding Ras Makonnen, it gives you the context to really grasp modern Ethiopian history.
For me, the most surprising thing about him is this contrast in his character. He's got this sharp, scientific mind, loves machines, math, but he's also deeply religious, believes in justice and mercy, especially in a time when brutality was pretty common. It's a really fascinating combination, a progressive spirit you don't always see.
Totally. And even though his story is specific to Ethiopia, to that time period, it still has relevance today. Think about leadership, the art of diplomacy, the challenges of modernization. His example shows how to stay focused on your vision while also adapting to a changing world.
And here's something to think about, a final thought for you. Given how much Ras Makonnen influenced things, especially shaping his son's path, what if he hadn't been there? How would things have played out differently for Ethiopia? It's a question worth exploring, and I hope it makes you dig deeper into this fascinating time in history.
Absolutely. Food for thought and a great note to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time.